Hi, friends, and welcome to the Autoimmune Mom Podcast. I'm your host, Allie. This is a space for moms navigating life with autoimmune disease, the exhaustion, the guilt, the strength it takes to show up, and the hope that we can still live full, meaningful lives even when our bodies make things harder. Each week, we'll have honest conversations with moms living with autoimmune disease, share practical support, and remind each other we are not alone in this journey. Before we dive in, if this podcast resonates with you, it would mean so much to me if you would follow or subscribe wherever you're listening, leave a review, and share this episode with another mom who needs it. You can also connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at the Autoimmune Mom Podcast, where I share encouragement, resources, updates about new episodes. If you're looking for extra support, you can download my free Autoimmune Mom Survival Guide through the link in my bio. Let's get into today's episode. Hello out there, community. Welcome back. This is Allie, your host of the Autoimmune Mom Podcast. Today, I'm very excited for my guest. She's going to be talking to us about something I think is missed by a lot of people who are trying to heal themselves, not talked about enough. And it could be the missing link that some of us are really needing to get to that healing. So Jessica Brown, she is a clinical nutritionist, Stanford certified compassion teacher. She's a compassion teacher. Author of Beyond the Shot and The Loving Diet. She's the creator of the GLP-1 Nutritional Academy. She has 25 years of experience in functional medicine, clinical nutritionist, and the compassion coaching. So much we could talk about on this podcast today. I'm really excited that you're here. Thank you so much for your time and sharing with our community what you've learned in the last 25 years. So excited to talk to you, Jessica.
Thanks for having me and having this conversation.
Oh, yes.
Really important one.
You know, it's 16 years ago, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, and I have thyroid problem too, and I tend not to talk about that as much because it's not as big on the forefront of my autoimmune journey. But I've tried 1.5 million things, and there was only one other person who ever said anything to me about healing and going deeper into more of a personal, taking a roadmap of my personal life to find where I could heal emotionally to help with the healing, because I was so good at all the diets and supplements and chiropractic and acupuncture and sauna and cold and doing all the things. I was like the perfect person when it came to that. But there was still a disconnect and I could not heal. And one other practitioner in 16 years said something to me about what you are specializing in. And I think that's telling that, there's a need for this conversation. Why don't we start with how you got to where you are and your journey to where you are?
Pain is a huge motivator. So whether it's emotional pain or physical pain, so I really got here because of my own pain. I searched for answers. I thought I knew. I tried to go outside of myself as best I could. I became what I called like a perfect performer, like what you're saying. And it did not provide peace, and it didn't change how I related to my own circumstances. So I really came to do the work that I do because of my own personal pain, and felt like I was consistently coming up short with ways to be free or to get past my own limitation. So for me, it was a personal experience. I do have an identical twin sister, and she has 2 autoimmune diseases. And so for me, started working in the autoimmune world because the genetics are so inside of me to have autoimmune disease. And so when my sister was diagnosed, she said, "Oh my gosh, what should I do?" And so, of course, the first thing was get on a restricted diet, start doing all the testing. And so I became really proficient at that. But what I realized as a nutritionist working with people with autoimmune disease is a lot of people started to become also perfect performers and not get better or feel trapped in the space that they were in. And so I started to practice compassion because it was a very effective, evidence-based modality that people could learn themselves. And it helped people start relating to their circumstances differently, even if they couldn't change their circumstances, which is what really autoimmunity is. On a personal level, I had a marriage fall apart and lost pretty much everything. And I realized there were things I was scared terrified actually to look at inside of myself. And so I started doing the work on myself. And when I saw the transformation inside of myself, I started working with my clients. And they were really trustworthy enough of me to sort of help them move along where they were in their journey.
Interesting. And, I've been noticing a lot in this community of women that I'm talking to, moms, that a lot of these moms that I've spoken to all have some kind of trauma situation or high stress situation right before diagnosis or during diagnosis, or they've helped, foster a child through cancer. And then 3 years later, when they kind of relax, this whole thing comes into place. And it's almost like I'm seeing this pattern. Have you seen that pattern as well?
There's something that I encourage all your listeners to do as they're listening to this, something that they can do to help them understand. It's called the ACE study, the Adverse Childhood Experience Study, and you can actually go online and take the test for free. That was one of the things that I did. I was born into a life where I felt like I was broken, rejected, unlovable, and beyond repair. When I kept trying to get past it, get away from it, get through it, fix my brokenness. And then I did that ACE. My God, I remember doing the ACE score, and my score was so horrible. And it was based on nothing that I had anything to do with. It was being a parent of an alcoholic, having a divorced like my parents divorced. There's all of these things that science has actually shown that the higher our ACE score, the more likely it is that we're going to be dealing with chronic illness and all of the emotional and mental things that come along with chronic illness. And so when I saw my own ACE score, which was nothing I could change, so high, I started to think, oh my God, I'm really motivated to change my ACE score. Does anything change it? And I started to see that compassion and practicing compassion actually can help lower the consequences of our high ACE score, which is chronic illness. So high ACE score, chronic illness go hand in hand, and science has already proven it. But for those of us who feel helpless about how we came into the world and who our parents were, it's a really cool way to kind of get to work to change or modify how that high ACE score shows up in our physical health, if that makes sense.
Interesting. And how do you change that? What's the first step in making that a reality, changing your high A score?
So practicing self-compassion requires a vote to believe in yourself and feel like you're worth your own care. But what it does when we start practicing it is it increases emotional resilience, which a lot of people who have high ACE scores from hard childhoods or traumatic backgrounds have low emotional resilience. And it also helps rewire our sympathetic nervous system to being in that kind of fight or flight, which also is really hard for our physical health. So those two things I thought was so cool to look at. Oh, I actually have more power than I thought. Doesn't take away maybe the need for therapy or having a team of people caring for you. But I love self-compassion because anyone can practice it. You just need to know how to do it. And then the biggest thing is you have to actually vote for yourself and be with the part of you that's struggling in this moment. That's a tall order.
I know. I have this, I'm from the Northeast, and we grew up
Mm,
in a very Irish Catholic family, and we were
me
like,
too.
you grin and bear it. You just like grin and bear it. And
You grin and bear it.
that's what we did. And my sister passed away when I was 7. She was only a month old. And I had a beautiful childhood, but my parents were grieving and we were all grieving. In 1986, you didn't talk about that kind of stuff. You just grinned and bared it. But it definitely left a mark on us. And we've all dealt with it differently. But autoimmune disease is pretty prevalent in my family as well. So it's interesting as a mother to think like, I can give my kids some tools here to help prevent them from getting a high A score. I mean, if we have some tools that are more self-compassionate, that would be an amazing that would make my whole month, like my whole year, if I could take away a little bit of this, you're predestined because it's in our DNA and we've all had trauma and all that stuff, which I don't believe is the full picture. I think loads the gun, it doesn't pull the trigger type of thing. But so what are some of the steps we can do?
Well, one is to understand that self-compassion does usually require a certain level of feeling uncomfortable. There's discomfort, and we just don't like to feel discomfort. And so one is just sort of acknowledging like, I just want to be past this. I want to be over this. I don't like to feel comfortable, and just start there and realize that compassion is giving yourself support and care in an uncomfortable state, wishing things were different, feeling like you got bad luck of the draw, especially with autoimmune disease. And so that's the first thing is just look at where your orientation is. I call it the NICE protocol, what I write about in my book, which is the first thing is notice. So first we just want to notice. And I have a lot of my clients write their struggle story, which is just put pen to paper. I know we're trying to rewrite our story, get past our story, pretend our story doesn't exist, you know, but there's a part of us that's still hurting. And so compassion asks us if we will at least pay attention to the part inside of us that's hurting. And we always, especially in this country, we see that as a deficit. We just need to, be strong.
Yeah.
But self compassion is actually one of the biggest inner strengths that we can flex because it's been shown to increase emotional resilience. So that the next time you are challenged, the next maybe diagnosis or the next person that we deeply care about passing, we will be able to say, this is really hard. I'm terrified or I'm scared. I don't know how I'm going to get through this, but I'm going to be here for myself as I'm going through this hard experience. So, notice is the very first thing. However, you can notice your pain and your struggle and your
Acknowledge it.
story,
Yeah.
do it.
Yes. That makes sense to me because I always tell my kids, there's no growth in your comfort zone. So if we're just sitting over here growing, comfortable and we're not growing and we're not learning and we're not developing and you have to get uncomfortable. So I love that. So you said nice protocol, noticing what's the next step?
Include.
Include.
And so, what are we including? We're including the parts inside of ourselves that are hurt, that feel left behind, that feel unlovable, that are scared that we're missing something, feel like our body has betrayed us. We want to include the quiet parts that we shove aside or back into a closet because we feel like those aren't the winning parts of ourselves.
I bet you that's
So
really hard for a lot of
first we notice them and then we actually include them. I think of it like this. Think of our internal landscape as a group of friends or like a part of a sports team. We always want the best parts, the best players on our sports team. But we know that a good sports team always includes people who have many talents. And if we're including everybody in our sports team, we have to include the underdogs. We have to include the parts that just need a little bit more coaching or help. That's including and saying, I'm not going to abandon you anymore. I'm not going to put you in the closet. I'm actually going to include you in how I see myself in my life and stop identifying you as the loser or the part that's holding me back. Again, takes a lot of vulnerability,
yeah.
takes a lot of voting,
I can
but these
imagine that's a sticky point for a lot of people. Like they don't want to
huge point,
it's not that's where the uncomfortableness is coming in full force, in my opinion.
full force.
And yeah, that can be hard to do, but liberating on the other side.
Very liberating because it also is signaling that there's no part of you that isn't lovable. And so that's so ingrained in chronic illness, is, oh my gosh, I did something wrong to cause this, or I missed something. And those parts are still active and alive. And they're often the parts of us that are making really important decisions. When we start to get scared, it's those parts of us that come in that hold heavy weight for how we stay safe.
1,000% can see that for sure. And then the next step, C.
Compassion, showing compassion.
Why can we be so compassionate for other people and so hard on our own selves?
I
It's
ask
one of the things
myself,
my mother tells me all the time. You're so hard on yourself.
y-
Chillax.
Humans believe that transformation comes through hardship. And so if it's not uncomfortable or hard, then you're not trying hard enough. We have proven, or we have shown ourselves that we prove our worthiness by what we're willing to sacrifice. And so I think it kind of comes from that, no pain, no gain. That is we're so immersed in that.
Hmm. For sure. I mean, in my own experience, that was my mentality for 15 years.
There's a really interesting study that was done with professional athletes and compassion, because compassion is so no man's land, especially when it comes to things that are competitive,
Yeah.
that people were convinced that people who practice compassion were actually poor sports players. And what they found is that professional athletes that practice compassion do better competitively. So we don't have to give up our love of competitiveness,
Yeah.
but we have to reorient how we see ourself and our worth if we fail to practice compassion. And that's the part that I just absolutely love the most about compassion, is it's been studied over and over and over again to show that people who last the longest and have the greatest resilience tend to practice compassion. But it doesn't mean for a second that you're not strong, capable, competitive, love a good game kind of thing.
Well, that's a mind tough to get my mind around as an ex-athlete. Like, we were programmed to just win, like being compassionate with my body not responding the way, it always has, is very difficult. I feel like I've failed. I feel like I've tried to heal a million different ways and it's always a failure. And my entire youth, I asked my body to do something and it did it, and it responded in a very specific way, high level way, and all of a sudden it was not responding, and I was really, who am I if I'm not an athlete? And really hard on myself. Like, that's a tricky one too.
That would be a good question too for you to notice in that nice protocol,
Yeah.
is notice what the part of you that has that failure component feels or is experiencing, or more importantly, what it believes. Because that kind of curiosity is going to help unpack and make it more safe to practice compassion. And so, because we do have these separated parts of ourself, and your failure part, I don't know if you would even call it a part. Does that sound like it resonates with you? Like there's a part of you feels like it failed?
Sometimes, yes. In healing, yes. I'm not someone who's afraid of failure. I do take steps, but in this one particular point, like, I was
Mhm.
a competitive athlete and then I was running and my body was very much active part of what I was and doing every day. Like, I was always working out. I had a goal. I needed a scholarship. I needed to score 1,000 points. I needed to be an all-time leading scorer. I needed to find something when I graduated. So I went into running, and then I did a half marathon, and then I needed to do there was always this, and my body was always responding. And then it all went to shit. And I had no idea I felt like a failure. I had no idea who I was if I didn't have all of that. So here I am 16 years later, and I've peeled back some onions. There's always work to be done because you can always fall back on these feelings, even if you're like, do you ever conquer any of this? I don't know. I feel like it's just you're constantly growing.
Well, see, as you're sharing that story with me, I'm wondering what belief got formed as you had that experience, because that's going to be the place where everything is here to assist us with something. And so that perhaps you could maybe look at what's gone on with your body with rheumatoid, and what happened back then with the failure piece, which is, and I'm going to take a liberty to just say, like, maybe this has something to, yeah, I'm not sure if this would be a belief, but as you're talking, I'm wondering,
Yeah.
which is, if my body fails in any way, I'm a failure.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Because
that's,
all I was an athlete back then. And I didn't have children when I was diagnosed. So I was just met my husband. We were getting married, but like, I was an athlete. I had a master's degree, but I was waiting to, like, I didn't have a full career. I was an athlete and now I'm not. And so that was a major failure for sure.
Well, these beliefs they help us make sense of something that is so challenging. So you're just going along living your life and then all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And so these beliefs of if my body fails, I'm a failure isn't actually true. But in the moment when you're having your experience, it helps you make sense of what is going on that you can't understand at that moment. And then what happens is when we don't clear them up, because actually it's not true that you're a failure
Yeah.
if your body fails. But it just seemed like that helped you pull together to create an understanding of your hard situation.
Yeah.
And that belief stays if we don't correct it. And then it moves over into the unconscious and it becomes the land for which we look out from. And then it becomes so familiar to us that we don't even remember that that's the belief that we have that's dictating how we see life. And self-compassion is the one skill that we all can practice to change that belief. And it's actually just through care. It's literally just "Wow, I was doing the best that I could at that moment, and I didn't understand what was happening to me, and I decided that, but it's actually understandable, but it's actually not true. Look how well I did making sense of that hard thing that happened to me." Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. Yeah.
Now, as I'm saying that to you, you might even notice how you feel inside as we're talking, and
Yeah.
that's the needed part. How do you feel?
I feel like I just gave my little self a hug. Forgiveness, I guess. I don't know. It's an emotional feeling for sure.
Very emotional,
Yeah.
and well, for people who are listening, that they maybe they have, like, children, or maybe they have, they're an aunt or an uncle, and they have we think about kids who might be going through this, and then you can think about you going through that,
Yes.
which was you would completely intervene if you had a child that went through a hard experience that then decided they were the failure because their body failed.
Yeah.
And you would say, "Oh my gosh, no, no, no.
Yeah.
Look at how amazing you are and how hard you're trying and you're showing up every day." See, we
Yeah.
intervene.
Yes. Yeah.
Self compassion is that we can go back and intervene anywhere on our timeline. And that's what's so helpful for chronic illness
Yes.
as well.
I can see that. I'm very hard on myself for a lot of different things, but to take the second to acknowledge it and notice it and give myself compassion, and that's an uncomfortable thing for me. But maybe something that I've started to do without really noticing that I'm doing it.
Mhm.
And we can talk about that in a minute. But what's the final component, excuse me, my throat, of nice?
Experience.
Okay.
And so when I asked you, Allie, how are you feeling? And you said a little emotional,
Yeah.
that's that.
Okay.
So we want to notice what our story is. We want to include all the parts that have felt left out or turned away or cast out. We want to show those parts compassion. And then we want to know, experience what it feels like to do that.
Okay.
Very effective.
Very effective. And I would assume that some people catch on to this a lot faster than others. Like this is a practice. You have to, it's like a muscle. You have to work it out to get, this isn't just oh, okay, let me do this one. I'll write down my story and notice all these things and now I'm cured. Like this is something that we need to be continually doing.
It's a muscle. And just to help everyone feel better, like for me, myself, I'm so stubborn and thought that I knew the way it took me years to do this until finally I actually had no other options. And I was willing to give up my position that I knew how to get through my own pain. I knew how to solve my pain. I knew how to heal my pain. I knew how to fix my brokenness. I
Mhm.
finally had to give up that position that I knew the best. And for me, it took years and years. So anybody who's listening to this and thinking, "Oh my God, that sounds hard," or you have to practice, I'm pretty much held out as long as I possibly could to show myself care
I think
because
that, sorry, go ahead.
I didn't think I deserved my own care because that was the weak way.
Yes, I resonate
Mhm.
with that for sure because we're strong Irish, well, I'm an Irish Catholic women,
Me too, Irish Catholic.
grin and bear it. And, if our grandmothers can get through the depression, we can get through this. And that's
Potato famine.
Exactly. So that all resonates with me. And in your book, you talk a lot about this type of thing in healing the way that people eat and their
Mm.
relationship with food. And that also resonates with me as somebody who's struggled with her weight most of her life. And so that component, we talk about it in autoimmunity, but I know that there's just from talking to women in this community that I have here, a lot of us are struggling with our weight too. We're taking medications, we're we're doing all this. So could you touch a little bit on how you've seen it help with weight loss?
So when we look at, I call that the inner eater, the part of us that struggles with our weight. And so what we want to do is first ask ourselves, what is the relationship that we have to the part of us that struggled with our weight for years and years and years and years? What's our relationship? Because when I looked at that, I was like, hate that part of me. I just want to not struggle. We don't have a good relationship. The part of me that struggles with my weight, that part of me that struggles with my weight has been both the thorn in my side and the problem I've been trying to solve forever. That was the girl that got made fun of in her bathing suit when I was 8 years old. That was the part of me that put myself on a diet doing Alba chocolate milkshakes when I was 9 years old. So the first question is we want to just stop struggling with our weight. And in order to do that, we have to acknowledge that we've struggled with our weight and to create a more cooperative relationship to the part of us that's been struggling with our weight. For me, it was realizing that I'm maybe never going to feel happy about my weight, but that I would definitely find peace. So for me, I found peace with being unhappy with my body, which sounds really strange. But I just kept finding like, oh my God, if I'm just happy with my body, then it'll be okay. But for me, I actually said, "You know what? I've actually been unhappy with my body forever. I still don't really like it very much. I'm appreciative of all the things that it does,
Yeah.
but I just have not liked the struggle I've been in. I don't like the way that it looks. It's been a little bit of a disappointment, and I'm just gonna be okay with that." And when I did that, it took a huge weight off my shoulders.
I think just giving women permission to think that is kind of powerful because, like that something that I would say too. Have I ever really been happy with my body, even when I was strong and running marathons and smaller and all of that? No, I actually was never happy with it. It's always been, I'm 6 feet tall. I've always stood out. My hair is curly and all over the place and like things that I can't even control. And then add in weight and you're like, so I think that's pretty powerful to say, it's okay. It's okay if you don't like it.
And to find peace with it
Yeah.
instead of constantly feeling like you need to transform it. But then it also gives yourself permission to take action in whatever feels best to you, which is for me why I didn't feel like I needed to justify or defend going on a microdose of a GLP-1 medication. I don't need to feel positive about I don't think body positivity works because it's a lot of bypassing, and I also feel like I don't feel body neutrality either. have happiness. And I think that I can find a place where I can have a cooperative relationship with my unhappiness
Mhm.
due to self compassion.
There's things in this world that we are unhappy with but have to live with, and it's fine. We can put it over here. Maybe I don't know what it is, but politics of the state you live in. But that's fine. We're still going to live here and we can put it over here and we can be fine with that. But our bodies, no, we can't do that. We have to, kill ourselves trying to get ourselves to be the way that our mind thinks we should be. So let's talk a little bit more about the microdosing of the GLP ones, because I know that's another thing that you're um, pretty passionate about and an expert on, if I can go that far.
I had a life insurance policy and by the way, like being a nutritionist, I felt like I know, like I kind of prided myself on eating healthy and doing all the right things. And it was like we're kind of at the end of COVID, and I had a life insurance policy, and my blood work came back for that life insurance policy, and it showed that I was like almost pre diabetic. And I was like, what? And so I went through a huge process. And what did I do? Oh, I'm going to restrict. I know
Yep.
exactly what to do. I'm going to go keto. I'm going to do intermittent fasting. I'm going to join the gym. I'm going to show you, pre
Yes.
diabetes. And that's sort of like the route that I took. And I realized through listening to some other people in the field that maybe being on a microdose would actually help with the inflammation that was coming along with being perimenopausal. And so for me, I just took a step back and I looked at all the factors. I'm at the late stages of perimenopause. I met with a cardiologist because I have heart disease that runs in my family. I met with my primary care doctor, and I just started talking about like, what are all the things that I could do? And so for me, microdosing a GLP dramatically helped lower my disease risk, all my inflammatory markers, and it allowed me to have more breathing room without going straight into restriction, straight into intermittent fasting, counting calories, counting my macros to make my body smaller to be more healthy. And for me, it allowed the space and the freedom to have more tools in my toolbox, along with going on hormones and, of course, working with my cardiologist. And
Yeah.
so for me, it was just a no brainer that really transformed how my health presented.
Interesting. So we all know that they get a bad rap from a lot of people. And some people are like, 10 years, everyone's going to have heart disease because they took this just like fen or whatever it was in the 90s that everyone was taking. And I think there's some misconception that actually these have been around for 20 something years. They're not new, they're just being used differently for the first time. But can you speak to the public, like to the woman out there, the mother out there that's really struggling and thinks she wants to try it, but she's not sure. She's got inflammatory problems. Maybe she doesn't need to lose weight. Maybe she does. Maybe some, because I know you're big in science and reading literature and, maybe some science backed information that you might be able to share to help ease somebody's worries, not talk them into it, but ease their worries about it.
Well, first is it's important to work with a doctor. And so before I went on my medication, I worked with my GLP-1 provider who gave me the prescription. But before I started it, I went to both my primary care. More importantly, I went to my cardiologist. And I said, it's just really important for you to know what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And do I have your approval? And so don't listen to me. Anybody who's listening, I'm a nutritionist. I don't have the power or the licensing to say what you should do.
We're not doctors.
We're not doctors, lean on your team. But what we know from the research that anybody can start digging up is that there are multiple studies that are coming out that are looking at how these medications work. Yes, they have been around since the early 2000s. And when I say this, I'm talking about the ones that are FDA approved. So I'm not talking about the retatrutide, although that's coming into FDA approval. I'm talking about Ozempic, Wegovy, and Zepbound. So those things have been shown over and over again to not just work on glucose and insulin and glucagon. They're actually they're actually immune modulators. So they work on the cellular immune sites. So we have GLP-1 receptors all over our body, including on our heart tissue, including in our brain. And GLP-1 receptors can bind onto the immune cells in all of those places, and they can modulate inflammation. We know this because NF kappa beta is a cytokine. We talk about rheumatoid arthritis. NF kappa beta is stimulated. We have inflammatory cytokines coursing through our system, and that is what is progressing the disease, keeping it in an inflammatory state. And we know that these medications bind to the immune cells and they help thwart NF kappa beta, along with other cytokines like interleukin 6. And so we're at the beginning stages where I think, promising evidence is starting to come out that help us understand these are not just weight loss medications, they're actually immune modulators. And autoimmunity is an immune issue, an overactive immune issue. And we're going to probably, I think, in the next 4 or 5 years, start to see these medications with evidence research studies show at a deeper level what they can do. Because what I'm seeing is pretty amazing.
Yeah, you shared a couple of studies on your Instagram page about rheumatoid arthritis that were pretty, hopeful, and that these are changing the ways of which we might be treated eventually some years down the line. My
Exactly.
rheumatologist has no interest in talking about it, but I have a family member who has another rheumatologist in another part of the state, and they're hopeful that they will be able to get off of their infusions that they are taking because of them. So I just think it's just a
Just
great.
so
Go
And
ahead.
just so everybody feels a little better, I do post a lot of this on the Loving Diet Instagram page. And just so everybody knows a little bit behind the curtain, I get messaged by medical providers who aren't afraid to have these conversations with their patients and have said, "This is great. Thank you for getting this information out." So it's not speaking for all doctors.
No.
And it's important to say these are not FDA approved, but for doctors who are thinking a little bit outside the box, and mostly the doctors who have contacted me have said, I have patients who went on this for weight loss, but my God, did their rheumatoid markers improve? And so they get my blessing. And so that's sort of like how it starts. And so
Yeah.
just for people to see, I'm not posting this in a vacuum. I hear from all sides of it. I just don't talk about it publicly, nor do I mention any names. But, people are starting to make connections and see
It's
the benefit.
funny because I did talk to my rheumatologist about it a year ago, and she was just like, "Oh, whatever, like nothing." But then this next time around, she's like, "Well, there are studies that it helps with osteoarthritis." So now the things are changing a little bit in it, but not willing to go so far as to say it's helping. And I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I don't understand how these medications work any differently than I have a baseline understanding of what they do, but it's interesting that they are helping people, and it's unfortunate there's so much stigma around it. I don't know why anybody cares what anybody does or takes, and
Well, the side effects are serious and they're real.
yeah,
And so that's really important to just state, like right off the bat. Some people do worse on them. Some people have horrible things that they encounter. So it's very important to recognize that when we're talking about this, we have to include that in the conversation as well.
for sure.
Just as a personal viewpoint, when I went on them, I went on a very small dose because I was scared of the side effects just personally, And so I feel like microdosing or starting very small is a really great way. As long as your doctor works with you and helps you with that, that's a really great way to mitigate the side effects. But again, we're talking outside the box.
Yeah, yeah, and it's hard because, as you know, no doctor like you need to go to your cardiologist with this information. You need to go. No, the doctors are not all talking to each other. No one like the doctors are not communicating. So you really need to advocate and take your own health into your own hands and make sure you're running it by all of the players in the game before
And
you're.
that Yeah,
Yeah,
and doctors are not up on all this published research because they're so busy. A lot of them just don't have time. So they
yeah,
don't have time to look at the research, analyze it, and figure out how it's going to fit into their professional practice. Which is the other thing, messages that I get, which is, wow, thanks for sharing this. I didn't know. So that just part of a personal love that I have, which is I love seeing the emerging research. I love seeing the research that just got published last month. And
yes,
that's the research I'm gonna bring to all of the people who follow me on social media, but it doesn't mean that it's gotten to the doctors yet. It doesn't mean that they have the time or the energy to take that information and shift their practice. I think that there's studies that show that the way that most doctors get their published research is through pharmaceutical
I
companies.
was just gonna say, yeah.
So,
So is there a business model already like this? I don't know, but like, do doctors have a consultant that they pay to read these researches and bring them to them so that like if they don't have the time, should somebody be doing that?
I think that published journal like so JAMA,
Yeah.
or the journal Nature, the journal Cell, like doctors will get those publications sent to them. And that's probably,
But
if
do
they
they
have
read them?
time,
Yeah.
if they have time, they'll
Yeah.
read them and
Yeah.
they'll see everything.
And
But
then
that's
there's
a really,
the layeredness of your insurance because I've been through the ringer with insurance over the last 16 years. And like, I don't get it. My doctor can want me to take it, but the insurance company is a hard no. So then I have to go to a million different other ridiculous things to try and fail for 10 years before you find something that works for you. And that's not fun. It's very destructive to the body to do that too, I think.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
And all the things about where we're talking about the side effects, which is, not only are there serious side effects like pancreatitis and gastroparesis, but there's also things that people who are on these medications should be very focused on doing, like getting enough protein. lifting weights, making sure you're not losing weight too fast, which can cause hair loss and bone loss and muscle loss. And so we want to go into we want to go in just eyes wide open, and not deny the things that we're our job if we're on the medication to do.
So one of the things that I've wondered about with it is, I working out, lifting heavy weights is like really not something that I do because I mean, I went for a walk yesterday and today I'm limping because my foot hurts. So lifting extremely heavy weights, my joints in my hands are so messed up that I can't even pick up a 25. I can't grab it physically. So like then I'm like, if I don't lift the heavy weights and is this very detrimental? Should it not be done? So all of these questions, and there's no real experts to talk to about, the doctors know this part of it and they recommend you do that, but they're not.
Well, I'm assuming your audience might be mostly female.
I think so.
And when we talk about how important it is to lift weights, it's not just in the category of GLPs, it's in the category of aging.
Yes.
And all women who go into menopause are going to experience the risk factors of bone loss going up. And so that's where we had to say, like, Ali, you would want to maybe work with somebody like a trainer who has experience with people who have rheumatoid arthritis so that you're able to capture the benefits and still not
Yeah.
have soreness, and so that it would be tailored to you.
And then that goes back to me being compassionate because my body doesn't respond the way it used to in the gym and I hate it. So
Yeah.
then I have to be compassionate with myself and notice it.
Yes.
And yeah, so it's a vicious cycle, but it's a good one to be aware of and to, we're always trying new things, especially in this community, but I don't know what.
And all the things that are limiting us from our viewpoint and preventing us from allowing us to be compassionate and kind to ourselves as we're trying to meet our goals is within arm's reach. I tell everybody your experience has formed the beliefs that are dictating how you live your life and why, what you deserve, how you're going to see success, the things that you're going to strive for, the kind of parent you're going to be, the kind of friend you're going to be. And they're all within arm's length. They're just all right here because they're the beliefs that we formed after we went through an experience and we were trying to make sense of it.
Mhm.
And so all of these things with compassion is it's an inside job. It's an inward journey. It is inward skills. It has nothing to do with going outside of ourselves. And so all these things that we're talking about, how we relate to ourselves and our illness, these are all things that I tell everybody, they're right here with you. There's no magic formula. Just write down your story. And when something hard happened to you, what did you decide about yourself? And then, it's like the power of forgiveness. We are so able to forgive others for their transgressions, but we are so unable to forgive ourselves for making up beliefs that actually kept us safe and helped us understand a hard thing we went through. And so just taking the first step to sort of practice that really transforms our health, our disease outcomes, how we relate to our health, and all of these things that we're really talking about our relationship with food and our body. And so I just have not found anything better because compassion is a part of every major religion on the planet.
Mhm.
And it's a part of how we stay connected to the people that we love, but most importantly, how we stay connected to ourselves.
Yes, I love that.
And it's
Well,
under talked about.
and have you ever seen anyone fully heal without the compassion piece? Just as a little.
Oh gosh, that's a hard one because I think that people will say I am fully healed and I can prove it because here's how I look on paper. But then when we do a little bit of a deeper look and we start peeling away the layers, we'll find that there maybe are some parts inside of them that are scared or lonely
Mhm.
or hurt. So it's
Yeah, that makes
yeah.
sense. I've stopped focusing on being healed and just feeling good. Like I just need to, I don't like to say, I mean, I've said it on here a couple times, but I have rheumatoid arthritis. It's something I live with. Like I live with the sun coming up and down every day and I try not to own it. And am I going to be fully healed of it? I don't know. I hope so. Maybe, but doing this inner work, the deeper part, understanding who I am, that's becoming more apparent as I get older and older. And it's a scary journey, but an important one.
It's a good point because I found that as we age, there's more capacity to do this. And because it's hard to have a conversation with the parts inside of us that feel like we failed. And that's something that as we have been just the grit of life is like, oh, yeah, okay, I'll start looking at that. But when you're in your 20s, it's way harder
Yeah.
to look at that unless you're hit with something that's really scary and hard, like a big diagnosis.
Yeah. Well, excellent, Jessica. Thank you so much for being a part of my show. I mean, I could talk to you all day long. This has been excellent. I think there's a lot of good stuff. And I would highly recommend reading Jessica's book,
I'll get
Beyond.
it up here.
Yes, Beyond. I actually audibled it because the season of life of which I am in, sitting down and reading is hard for me to do. But I listened to it on my walks and stuff, and it was excellent. There's a lot of tools in there to help you get through all the compassion piece of this. It is heavily focused on weight loss, but you were saying your other book, which I haven't read yet, is more about autoimmune. That one is The Loving Diet, correct?
Yeah. So the loving diet might be a place to start. Although I tell everybody, if you read that book, do not follow the diet part because the book was published in 2016. And now we know so much that we know that restriction with autoimmune disease and the kind of diet, which was the autoimmune paleo diet, along with low FODMAP, is not appropriate for most people. And so if you read the book, just read the first 2/3 of the book, not the dietary piece, but it will get everybody into the groove of compassion. And then the second book, Beyond the Shot, is also, it is geared towards how we see our body, how we see our inner eater,
Mm-hmm.
but it is a one step further for parenting and self
Yeah.
compassion blended together.
The reparenting piece. But there's a lot of tools and steps in which to help you along the journey of it.
Yeah.
And I thought it
Every
was,
chapter.
and I could relate a lot of it to autoimmune too. I tried to put both lens on when I was reading it or listening to it. So, and you can
And it's
follow.
on Spotify as well.
It's on Spotify. Yes. You can follow Jessica along on her Instagram page, The Loving Diet. At The Loving Diet, is that what it is? Yes.
My loving diet's the TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, and my website is The Loving Diet.
She's got some really good studies that she shares for a lot of different autoimmune diseases. That's how I found you. And I'm not one to read a medical journal or a study. It's a little thick for me. And so I love how you present it quick and easy to understand. And it's definitely bringing some hope and shedding light on different areas. So thank you for everything you've done. And thank you for your time here. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Before we wrap up today's episode, I just want to say thank you for being here and spending this time with me. If this conversation resonated with you, it would mean so much to me if you'd follow or subscribe to the Autoimmune Mom podcast wherever you're listening, and take a minute to leave a review. It really helps other moms who are navigating autoimmune disease find this space. And if you know of another mom who might need to hear this message, please share the episode with her. You can also connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at the Autoimmune Mom Podcast, where I share encouragement, resources, and up-to-date updates on new episodes. And don't forget, you can download my free Autoimmune Mom Survival Guide using the link in my bio on my socials. Remember, you're not alone in this journey, and I'll see you next week at the Autoimmune Mom Podcast. Take care of yourself, Mama. Your health matters too.